Welcome to Nonprofits on Course, where we take a dive into the future of nonprofits. I'm your host, Matt Hugg, president of Nonprofit.Courses, where you'll find thousands of free open access training videos for the nonprofit sector and much more. And don't forget to sign up for the emails. Mondays is always live events. So we do a summary of our live events calendar. Our 200 plus content experts have the ability to put their content in live events, whether they're doing webinars, seminars, conferences, and we send that to you every Monday, say, hey, here's what's going on. And on Thursday, we take a look at a topic in the Nonprofit.Courses universe based on some kind of thing we have going, like we took one of these calendars and say, hey, today is Thank a Mailman Day. And so we focus on direct mail, right? That's kind of brings some humor, we'll say, and good content to you every week. So we're going to dig into a very interesting topic today, Google AdWords and Google Ad Grants. And our guest today is Jessica King of Getting Attention. And hey, there she is. All right. But before we get to Jessica, a little bit of housekeeping. So if you have a question for our guest, just put it in the chat in the platform you're using. And our good and faithful friend Amanda will forward that to us. And we might answer live, when it comes to us, or we might hold it at the end, depends on how things are running. And we're recording this, so take notes if you want, but you can find the final podcast and video and transcript at NonprofitsOnCourse.com in the very near future, as soon as we get all that processed. And we'll be talking about free gifts later. Jessica's brought some things with us, with her. You can see the big bag she has, right? And if you're listening to the recording, just go to the show page, which will be at the bottom of the NonprofitsOnCourse.com website, and you'll see the specific show and the freebies will be there. So, Jessica, you've been very patient here, waiting.
Yeah.
Tell us about yourself. Tell us about you and Getting Attention.
Yeah, well, Matt, I'm really excited to be here, excited to be talking to you today. So, I am the business lead at Getting Attention. So, first, I'll kind of talk a little bit about my background, kind of my history prior to Getting Attention, and then I'll talk a little bit about what Getting Attention does.
Sounds good.
I started my career in social media for nonprofits, worked in that space for a little while, then moved into mission driven SEO, kind of dealing with the organic side of Google. And
Yep.
now with Getting Attention, I work with nonprofits on the paid ads side of Google. And so Getting Attention is a Google Ad Grant management agency. We specialize in the Google Ad Grant and we help nonprofits kind of wherever they might be at in their Google Ad Grants journey. So whether they are kind of just learning about it for the first time, kind of don't know how to get started, how to run ads, et cetera, or maybe they've been running it for a while and just need to free up some time for their team, we can kind of help anywhere in there.
Yeah. Or just get better results, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's huge to be able to take what you have and squeeze more out of it.
Yeah.
So I found a lot of people are confused about the word grants in Google Ad Grants. So let's take a quick little poll here to see where everybody is on that. So are Google Ad Grants cash to your nonprofits? Are they credit toward buying advertising? Are they something else? Maybe you don't know. Put it in the chat of whatever platform you're using. Just let us know what you think, and we will find out. And I can see the tabulations happening, the thousands of people online, the machines, that big IBM Watson thing grinding away. And we have, okay, so give folks a second here. And Jessica, what's the answer?
Yeah. So the answer is that the Google Ad Grant is not cash. It
Ooh,
is, you can think of it like credits towards advertising is probably one way to describe it. Another way
okay.
you could talk about it would be like a gift card that you can use on Google.
Hmm,
It is an in-kind donation of advertising dollars. So you get
okay.
this dollar amount. I don't know if that's going to be a quiz question later, but you get this dollar amount that you can spend in Google for search advertisements.
All right. That's cool. That's really good to know. So a little bit of gifts processing hoops to jump through, right? Because it's a gift in kind and it's not real cash, but it does have value. And you can make more value out of the value that it's given to you. So that's a really great thing about this. So leads me to the first question, just to get everybody on the same page, just so everybody knows what we're doing here. Can you explain what a Google Ad Grant is?
Yeah.
What do we have going here?
Yeah. So, like I kind of already said, the Google Ad Grant is a program from Google that is designed to help eligible nonprofits promote their mission via search advertisements.
Okay,
So,
let's pause there for a second. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Eligible. What's
yes.
what's eligible?
Yeah. So it will vary just a little bit from country to country. So if you
Mhm.
are watching this and you're maybe outside the US, you will want to just search Google Ad Grant and then your country and get your own requirements. But for US based nonprofits, it means properly registered as a 501c3. That is
Okay.
important. Typically, whatever your sort of charity registration is, if you're in another country, is going to be what they're looking for. And then you need to have what is called, Google says very helpfully, a high quality website. And so this is a very vague requirement, in all honesty. I will say that this grant is designed to be fairly easy to get. It
Mm.
is not really designed to be a super exclusionary program that only a couple of very elite organizations can participate in. It's designed to be very accessible even to smaller organizations. So when we're thinking about a high quality website, the types of things you want to be thinking about is like, is there some basic information about your organization that exists
Mm.
on the website? So, for
Okay.
example, how can people get in touch with you? Where are you located?
Right.
Maybe what's your EIN if people are interested in making a donation? Those sorts of things that build trust. And then the other component of that, which I think some nonprofits feel like they have to get everything all lined up before they can even apply. That's not the case. You can build on this over time. But it would be content that supports your mission and kind of
Ah.
explains to people what you're doing. So, like, as an example, maybe if you are a local animal shelter, right? You're going to have the basics. You're going to have, hey, here's our address, here's our phone number, here's our opening hours. Like that's kind of the bare minimum. When we think about content, you might have some content that's like, hey, here's a guide for what you need to do if you're adopting a dog from a shelter. Here is a page of statistics about how many stray animals there are in our community. Here is some information about why our approach is, especially humane and especially kind. Like these are the types of things that you might be adding to your website over time. And what this content does is it allows Google to understand more and more about you, which then in turn helps the advertising program find better and better audiences for you.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. Now that's very interesting that they would put in that kind of requirement about quality of website. But I guess the platform doesn't make any difference. It could be Wix, it could be WordPress, it could be anything out there, right?
Yeah, as long as the only thing I will give that caveat is you do need to have your own domain. So what I
Ah,
mean by that is like it has to
okay.
be like, nonprofit.com or .org. Some people think that the org and the like .com matters. It doesn't. But what does matter is you can't have like, you can't have your nonprofit.wix.com. It has to be
Right.
your own. That middle chunk right before the .com, .org, whatever, that has to be your organization's.
Okay, that's good. And honestly, that's not very expensive. I mean, you can get those really
$20 a
well.
year.
Go to my website. You'll see places you can get them in the deals page. So, okay, and interesting about the C3 designation in the US, right? Which you may not know, there are 27, I think, different kinds of nonprofits registrations. I don't know if we want to say it's either sophisticated or complicated, but things like chambers of commerce wouldn't be part of this, or credit unions wouldn't be part of this, or black lung trusts or cemetery corporations wouldn't be part of this.
Correct.
And in other countries, I think the word charity is huge. Like I know for our Canadian friends, that's a really key word, a key designation.
Yeah, and one other thing that I want to build on with that. So you did mention a couple of great examples of the types of organizations that aren't eligible.
Mhm.
Google kind of broadly offers three categories that are worth keeping in mind. And what I will say about all of this is like Google's own sort of like criteria are not, exhaustively detailed in legalese. I think to a certain extent, it's a little bit up to the discretion of their validation partner and the person who is looking at the application. So if you think there's a good chance based on kind of what I'm sharing here about like the spirit of the program
Mm.
that you would be applicable, I would say just go ahead and apply because it's a very low consequence application to fill out. It really doesn't take that long. And then
Okay.
if you get it, then you have access to it. But yeah, the three exclusions are universities and like
Mm,
schools. So
okay.
if you are a K through 12 school, if you're a university, there is an, an exception to the exception, which is that if you are a fundraising arm of a university,
Ah,
you actually are eligible as long as you're a 501(c)(3).
oh, that's interesting. Okay.
But
So a
if you're
public university that has a foundation, I used to
exactly.
work for University of Cincinnati Foundation, they would be good. Hmm.
Yes, and or as an example, we also work with a foundation that helps gather scholarships and help children in like Catholic schools who maybe can't afford it in like the Seattle area. So like as an
Okay.
example, that
Right.
type of organization. So it doesn't mean that if your mission has something to do with education, that doesn't necessarily mean you're like completely off the board. It's just they're trying to here's what I will say. I think this is again just my opinion, not official communication from Google or anything. This is just
Mhm.
my opinion. I think the through line of these three categories is public funding. I think that's where they start to run into trouble with charitable gifts to the government, et cetera. So I think that that would be if you're looking for like what's a rule of thumb to kind of gauge this by, like a public school district as an example. Obviously, they receive public funding. That introduces some legal complications, I'm sure.
But nonprofits supporting the school district might be okay.
Exactly, because
Okay.
that's more of a yeah private
And
organization of citizens. So
and of course, we're not the final word on this. So if
nope,
anybody wants to, say, "Oh, they said," right? No, it's Google, and you got to go to them. So
exactly.
we're being interpretive here.
Yeah. So education institutions are one.
Hmm.
Hospitals and healthcare organizations is another. And this is another category that I
Mm,
think gets very hazy
yeah,
because we do work with nonprofits, like we've worked with in the past, like churches and stuff like that, who do have some sort of medical ministry or medical outreach that they
sure.
do. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, like, yeah, we run like maybe a free vaccine clinic every year, but like I wouldn't really call us a hospital. Again, go ahead and take a swing at it. I think what they're trying to avoid is like again large hospitals that have a significant component of public funding. The last one is governmental organizations. So you
Mm,
mentioned like chambers of commerce, usually not. A good rule of thumb for this would be if your web address ends in .gov, pretty
yeah,
good chance that you are
you're
not
right.
eligible for the Google Ad Grant.
Although there
But
are a lot of, like, our local municipality here uses the .org uh, address. So
yeah,
yeah, you got to watch for that.
it's not a perfect system. Really, no rule of thumb is going to be perfect and apply in all situations. But I think
Sure.
it's a good kind of litmus test. And again, if you think there's a good chance and you think you can make the case, I'd say go ahead and apply because
Okay.
you unlock 10,000 per month, which I don't know if this might be
No,
the first
let's
time I'm
talk about
mentioning that number.
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
10,000. How much is this on a credit? Because before the show, through social media, when we were announcing it, somebody asked. They said, "Hey, is it 15,000?" Sounds like maybe not.
Yeah. So that is a good question. And one we get sometimes. So it is a long running program. It's worth nonprofits who are applying today to know that the amount for now, for kind of however long Google says it is $10,000 per month.
Mhm.
So up
Okay.
to that amount. What you may encounter from time to time, there used to be, and this is like a while ago, they haven't, I mean, I think they maybe phased this out in the 20 teens. So it's been a minute
Mhm.
since this was a thing. There used to be a program from Google where like basically power users of the Google Ad Grant could unlock higher levels of spend. So if
Right.
someone found that in some very old corner of the internet, that might be why they got confused. And I think that number could go up pretty significantly. But no, for anybody new, and the other thing I think that happened with that, I think they grandfathered people in, but also if you didn't use that amount, I think they eventually went back down. So the amount that you should have in your head is 10,000 per month. And if folks have questions about the way that's calculated, I can definitely dive into all of that. But that is the amount that you are eligible to spend on search advertising every month.
And this is a use it or lose it. So if you can't roll it beyond the month and have 20,000 next month because you didn't use it this month, right? It goes away.
Correct. Yep,
Okay.
yep. So when you're thinking about kind of managing that 10,000 per month, what we typically do with our clients is just set a daily spend amount. So we
Mm,
set our ads so that they can spend up to, 10,000 divided by 30, that's $329 a day roughly. And that puts you in good shape to make sure that you're able to advertise consistently across the month because theoretically Google would not necessarily stop you from spending all 10,000 in one day, then
Right.
you get only that one day and only the users who happen to be searching and online and whatever on that particular day. So usually it's better to just set a daily limit. $329 a day is kind of what the math breaks down to on that, and then go from there so that that way you're getting kind of even coverage throughout the month.
Okay. Oh, that's good advice. So, what role does advertising play in nonprofit marketing these days? Because I come from a time, and I think a lot of people still hold this view that, oh, marketing and non, it's icky. Our program will speak for itself, which I don't subscribe to, but it's kind of the feeling out there of a lot of people. And I think a lot of it has to do with their personal comfort with getting out in marketing. And so they make ideas up in their mind about why maybe they shouldn't do it. But for advertising for nonprofits, especially when they're strapped for cash, why is this a good investment? I mean,
Yeah.
what's the benefit for them?
I think there are a few different ways that advertising fits into the marketing picture. So, the first one would be I think a lot of nonprofits, as you kind of alluded to, tend to stay in channels that they, meaning the staff, personally feel kind of comfortable with. So, I've met a
Right.
ton of nonprofits who lean very, very heavily into social media
Hmm.
because, they know how to make a Facebook post because they've done it for themselves in their own life since, 2010 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, a lot of nonprofits are very comfortable there. But when we think about the just sort of broad array of marketing options that you have, Google is an extremely powerful machine. And what Google helps you do is take advantage of sort of where people are and what we call their intent.
Mm,
So when someone is searching for something on Google, you can assume that there was a motivation behind that. Someone
okay.
opted to go to Google and look for something versus someone scrolling through their social media feed, they're probably looking for updates from, their family, their friends, maybe their favorite creators or whatever. And they might encounter your message, they might be hooked, but you can't assume that there's like an intentionality there
So
the
it's kind
same
of
way
a
that you
push
would.
versus pull thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. If it's coming at, it's difference between it coming at you involuntarily versus you going to it and searching for something.
Exactly, exactly. Another way you could think of that would be like if you were like walking down the street past someone's store
Hmm.
and maybe they've got like they've got someone handing out free samples. You might take a free sample because you'd be like, yeah, hey, sure.
Yeah.
You're here, you just gave this to me, whatever. Versus if someone walks into that store and browses around and is like looking for stuff, you can make a reasonable assumption that that person is serious about engaging with that store, about engaging with that business. So that's sort of the thought process behind having search as part of your tool. The other good thing about search as part of your nonprofit's like marketing toolkit is that it brings people to your website, which you have a ton of control over.
Mm.
And that's where a lot of your core activities are going to be happening: donations, volunteer signups, people getting on your newsletter, people applying for open roles at your nonprofit. Like your website's going to be the hub of all of that activity.
Well,
So,
and if I could pause you there for a second,
yeah,
that is a huge point. It grieves me so many times when folks say, "Oh, I have a Facebook page. I don't need a website." And it's like, no, 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 no. You're missing that's the hub of the wheel.
yeah.
You're having spokes without having something attached to it.
Yeah. And I think, if you're at the very, 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 very early phases, like where like I have an idea, it's me and a couple of friends, we see a need in our community and we're like taking the very first steps to go out there and start to address it. Facebook page, totally fine. Instagram page, totally fine. That can be a good way to start connecting with people and start building that story. But as your organization matures, you're going to want to, as you've already said, have a website. That's going to be important for you to be able to grow, which is usually the goal of most of our, clients that we work with, most of the nonprofits that we talk to.
Well, and obviously in Google AdWords, like you said before, it's a non-starter for the grant if you don't have the website.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so the reason to delve into the world, so we've kind of talked about like, okay, we've got these marketing options, we've got some channels that our organizations are going to feel very comfortable with, but we've got some that have some advantages as far as like what we can assume about the people who are using it and about the fact that it directs people to our sort of owned little landscape, our own little corner of the internet, right?
Mhm.
The reason to engage with paid advertising
Mm.
is because Google, and I will actually also make a case here. We're talking about the Google ad grant, that's its own thing. I would honestly even make the case that paid advertising on social can sometimes be beneficial. We see a lot of
Okay.
nonprofits who use that as well. But a lot of these platforms, the sort of days of like, throwing something up there organically, it just goes viral and it spreads. Like that does happen, but it's so crowded and it is
Yeah.
so difficult to stand out. And there's not a lot of control over the messaging that you get. So the
Mhm.
advantage of using paid advertising is that you can directly control what keywords you're showing up on. You can directly control what sort of language you are presenting to your audience when they are seeing your ads. You get Generally speaking, you're going to get better placement. It varies from results page to results page. So,
Mhm.
have that little asterisk, but you can appear at the top of the page, kind of above everybody else, or sometimes it's in the middle of the page. And you can kind of choose to highlight whatever content you think is going to be most engaging for people who are searching that particular keyword. Whereas if we compare how Google pulls organic results, you're a little bit at the mercy of what Google decides is the most relevant. Now, Google is learning, Google's always improving. So, this is not me knocking organic search, but you don't always have perfect control over how Google presents your various links, which pages Google chooses to promote on the organic side, et cetera, and results.
Well,
So,
and AdWords, if I'm correct here, you can even control the device, right?
yeah.
So
hmm
you can say, I only want to appear on cell phones. I only want to appear on desktop or whatever, right?
Yeah, you can target locations.
Mm,
Google's sort of targeting tools are changing as part of their privacy sort of rethinking data. But for now, at least, you can still target based on like age, gender, household income, if it's known.
right.
So there's ways that you can refine your targeting as well on in paid advertising. And so usually for folks getting started, there's kind of two barriers for most nonprofits that I see. One of them, of course, is expertise. The other one
Mhm.
is budget. So the cool thing
Yeah.
about the Google Ad Grant is it will not do much to solve the problem of expertise, but it will give you a chance to get started, see if this is something you want to invest more in without having to find the budget for advertising, in your
Yeah.
own pocket.
Well, and I think a big problem, that especially get to talk about expertise, is that people, they don't know necessarily what they're doing, and it's not. I mean, we're all new at everything at some point, right? So this isn't a ding against people, but bringing that expertise and ramping up quickly is really important if you want to get value out of what you're being given. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think that's true with any sort of marketing or any sort of, just like effort that your organization is going to
Oh.
put forward. So, I mean, even starting an email campaign, like how do you segment lists? How do
Mhm.
you make good graphics? How do you decide what links people are going to want to click on? Like, there's an art to all of these things, any of these
Oh,
things. So,
and the things I have learned since putting up Nonprofit.Courses. Are there certain kinds of organizations that are going to benefit from AdWords more than others?
I think there are a lot of schools of thought about this.
Hmm.
So, it depends on sort of how you are measuring success. That would be
Okay,
one big
good
thing.
point.
So, for organizations who are primarily measuring success based on how much of the ad grant they spent, I'll be 100% honest. I don't actually think that is the best sort of like bottom line metric that you could have, but it is a common one. And then I think your larger sort of bigger geographic spread or like the types of organizations where they're like, yeah, we would be happy to engage with anybody and we can kind of help anybody. So I'm thinking about, as an example, we work with a client who delivers mental health education resources to educators in schools. They
Sure.
would love to be in schools all around the country. So they want their ads to appear all around the country. That's a very big audience. So you have a lot of potential for clicks from all sorts of various places. You have the potential to rack up that level of spend.
Well, is it better though to be targeted, like to say that we're having a gala at the end of next month? We're going to focus all our ads on getting people to that gala, or we're
Yeah.
doing a campaign, or we're offering this special service for a limited time. I
Yeah.
mean, are those like the things that would really leverage this media?
Yeah, so as far as like outcomes, I am a huge fan of using conversions. So when I say
Mm,
conversions, that's Google's jargon for a meaningful action that somebody takes on your website.
okay.
And you get to choose what those are. I am a huge fan of using that as your measure of success, which is why I think that there are a lot of organizations that can be very successful with the ad grant. So if you look at, let's say, like a smaller community organization. So, for example, we work with an organization that is pretty specialized on providing shelter, like employment assistance, et cetera, in the city of Detroit, right?
Mhm.
So they don't really need to be advertising in, let's say, Tallahassee, because there's
Right.
not so much that audience is going to get out of the work that they do. but they do get a lot of conversions. And so they don't spend that full 10K every month because the, kind of addressable audience is much smaller. But the flip side of that is they're getting folks who are interested in their newsletter, who are hoping to volunteer, who are engaging with them. And so that is the value that they're getting out of that. So
So
while
having,
maximizing that 10K is a great goal, and we do always strive to do that in
Mhm.
our engagements as much as we can, it's not the only number that you should sort of be paying attention to when you're thinking about, was
and
this a good choice?
having a specific objective sounds like the best way to go. How many volunteers did we get? How many hours? How many volunteers? How much money? How much time, or cut time, or whatever it is, as opposed to just sending people to your website as awareness, right?
And I
Uh,
think there is value in awareness goals. Like I think they're easy to knock because,
Mhm.
everybody at the end of the day does have to go over their
Your power
sheets with their
company, you
accountants
can't
and
pay your power company in awareness.
no, it's true. And so while I do think that there's value for that, I think that you're right that like making sure that your awareness goals are tied to some other thing that's maybe
Mm,
slightly more tangible is a good step. So, like a great example of this would be when we're running awareness campaigns, we will usually set a goal to capture an email address because that does two things. One, it kind of gives us a gauge of like, okay, we're getting people to click to the website, but are they
mhm,
engaged? Because it's
right.
very easy to spend $10,000 advertising to people who will click on your website and then immediately leave. That's actually not that hard.
Yeah.
What's harder is finding those people who are going to engage with you over time. And then the other thing that nonprofits tend to focus on, and I understand the reasons that they do, is they tend to be like, will this drive donations? And
Mm,
the answer is it can, but you want to be thinking about it a little bit more broadly. And one of the examples I'll sometimes give is like if you see an advertisement on the TV, if you hear an advertisement on the radio, you're not immediately compelled to go out and buy that thing. Maybe you will if it happens to suit something you already needed or
No,
already
I'm sorry.
wanted.
Those old, Ron Popeil and Capro ads are flashing through my head right now. For
Yeah. And like that's
buy it
what
now.
the sort of my background and my
Mm,
master's degree is in communications and the you know back in the 50s, they were like, "Well, does subliminal advertising work?" And the answer is like, "No, not really," because most people forget things that they've
mm,
seen, right? So, what you're doing with your advertising campaign is getting people at the moment that they're interested, bringing them into your universe, your kind of sphere.
right.
So, if you capture that email, what you open up the chance to do is build that relationship with that person over time, and those are the types of things that lead to donations. So,
Right.
that's why I say like awareness has value. If I bring someone to the website, they sign up for emails, and then a year later, they make a donation. That awareness had value. It made this
Yeah.
person aware of your organization, and maybe they weren't aware of you specifically, but they knew they cared about, in the environment, or
Yeah.
they cared about like, whatever your mission is. So,
No, it makes
but
a
I
lot of
do think
sense.
it's
And, all fundraising is CIA. A lot of people have heard me say this, right? Capacity, interest, access.
yeah,
And interest is probably the most important of those three. And so getting people who are interested in your orbit is huge. And I can see where that would
yeah,
really be important and a good tool for this.
yeah,
So what's the future of Google AdWord grants? I mean, you kind of alluded to it a little bit before about how Google is always changing things, and maybe the money, they obviously came out of a situation where they had super users and decided to flatten that out, right? So now you got AI, right?
yeah,
Now you have and the nature of Google itself may be changing, not only technologically with AI, but also with this antitrust thing going on,
yeah,
where the company might explode out, just like who was it? Microsoft did before with things, and other companies have over time. So where does this program sit in all that? Where are we
yeah,
going?
yeah. I think this is a really good point and extremely timely. And I think, it's impossible for me to, with my like crystal ball, say exactly what's going to happen. But what
Sure.
some of the options that have been thrown around have been Google splitting its search function out from its advertising function, out from
Mhm.
some of these other things. Because the other thing that you might, casual users or sort of people who are just kind of scrolling but not necessarily paying attention to ads that carefully in their internet browsing Google owns obviously the ads that appear on Google search, but
Right.
Google also owns a few other types of advertisements. So the advertisements that play before a YouTube video,
Mm.
those go back to Google. The advertisements, not all of them, but a lot of them that appear like at the top and at the side of websites when you're browsing around, a lot of those are on Google's ad networks. So
Now,
another thing I
Google, as
noted,
opposed to
yeah.
Meta, who might own some of those too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Meta might own some. There are a couple of different providers, but AdSense is the name for Google's.
Oh,
In the biz, it's called programmatic advertising, but that is
okay.
the name of the like network. Basically, what happens for those of you who might be a little like interested in sort of the inside baseball view
Yeah.
of this, what happens when those like ads show? Basically, what happens is somebody has a website and they say, "Hey, I would be open to displaying ads on this site in order to monetize it." And so they basically build in like a little framework at the top
Right.
and at the side in which ads can appear. And then they sell that space to an ad network such as AdSense. And then what Google does is Google creates the ads or decides which advertisers are going to show up
Okay.
in these slots. And another thing that folks might not realize about ads, I think when we think about ads, a lot of folks are maybe familiar with, let's say, like the TV or radio model, right? Which is
Right.
like, if you're watching the Super Bowl, like Ford bought that, or the big game. I don't know if we can say Super Bowl, but
Yeah, right.
anyways,
I know, really.
you know, Ford bought that spot months, possibly years ago. They already
Yeah.
had their ad created, like it was set in stone. Google is a little bit different where Google is going through an ad buying process every time it sees an opportunity to show an ad. So for
Mm.
that is why sometimes clients and prospects will get a little bit frustrated when will be like, we're advertising on this keyword. They'll be like, well, I searched that keyword and I didn't see any ads on it. The
Right.
answer is like, that's because it is extremely individual. It's done at the per person level versus at the, let's say, keyword level or at the website level. So that would be another thing. If you see an ad on a site that you are like, this has nothing to do with what I'm looking
Oh,
at. Why am I being shown this ad? Probably your browsing habits,
well,
actually.
or yeah, if
Um,
you went to a couple of my my providers have like the background stuff, I'll go do something in the background, and then suddenly I'm seeing their ads all the time
yeah.
on searches for just that reason. Yeah.
And if you pay attention, so there's so much with this. If you do a lot of searching or a lot of activity on your mobile phone, where you've been and who you've been around are other things that
Mhm.
can influence that. So, as an
Let's
example,
not
I
creep
went.
everybody out here.
Oh yeah, I mean, but in some ways, like I hear this all the time, like the phones are listening to us, and it's. Uh, I don't know if it's more or less creepy, but your phone's not listening to you. It's instead figuring out who your friends are and what they've bought, and have assumed that you might also like that thing. So, like as
Yeah.
an example, I
Yeah.
went on a trip with some friends. They all had Cotopaxi bags, and then all of a sudden, I started getting ads for Cotopaxi, like a couple days after I had come home. So, at any rate, the to your question, which was originally like, what's the future of this?
Yeah.
I could see a world in which Google chooses to break apart some of their programs. I think
Hmm.
search and search ads will likely be very tied together. I don't think it is incredibly likely that that part will get broken out. But it is possible that maybe, currently when folks sign up for Google for Nonprofits, they also get access to YouTube for Nonprofits. It's
Hmm.
possible that Google search may become separate from YouTube and they may not talk to each other. It may be a little harder to kind of bring all of those things together. The other thing, and I think this should likely impact Google Ad Grants users a little bit less, because Ad Grants ads run in a separate, like, ad buying process from for profit advertisers, which is actually a good thing because they don't have some of the budget restrictions. So you don't really want to
Right.
be competing against, Walmart. But what may also happen is Google may change some of their advertisement policies. So folks who are in advertising should be keeping an eye on the court cases in my mind and should be keeping an eye on how their policies might change. But I would anticipate, since they are making money off of their corporate advertisements, off of
Sure.
their ad buyers, that will probably be where the bulk of any sort of reforms they're asked to do will be like situated. And then, the ad grant is really them giving away ad space. So you'll want to be paying attention to sort of like how the machine learning that powers Google ads may be changing, because that might impact your strategy. But I don't really see it going away entirely. And this, I think, also speaks to the importance of, as an organization, you want to have a diversified marketing toolkit. You don't want to
Yeah.
put all your eggs in one basket, be that Meta, be it Google, be it your email provider, you want to make sure that you have a few different channels, a few different ways of engaging with people, because you never know. TikTok is big now. In 10 years, it'll probably be something different that we're
Or
not
who
even
knows, the
talking
next year may
about.
be something different
And
given
maybe,
what we're
yeah, maybe
hearing,
even
right?
in 6 months, who can say? But this is sort of why you don't want to get too heavy on just one way of marketing your
Well, and it comes
organization.
back to being where your audience is. And so
Yeah.
you need to find out what your people are using and then start tracking on that. So, how about AI?
Yeah.
So, AI for creating Google Ads, but also, I mean, the search algorithms being influenced on AI. How's that going to play out?
Yeah. So I think we're seeing a few different things right now, some of which benefits advertisers, some of
Mhm.
which does not, and some of which is just sort of neutral or a little bit, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So what we have that benefits advertisers. So Google has recently, to much fanfare, rolled out their AI suggestions at the top of searches. And I'm sure probably a lot of people listening to this have already begun to see this, where if you ask Google a question, it'll try to answer it with AI.
Mhm.
The good news for advertisers about this, there was a lot of speculation in the organic search world of, is AI going to kill organic search? Like, is it going to make it so that nobody clicks on a website to read more? Google makes a ton of money off of advertising. That is kind of its foremost profit engine. So it is
Right.
not going to release an AI tool that will undercut its cash cow. Like, that is not going to happen. So where we are seeing AI has typically been on searches that don't really generate a lot of ads anyway. And then the ads do typically still appear at the
This
top.
is
So
all assuming that Google will dominate this market because maybe an AI search by somebody else will rise up. And we've seen this, right? All think of AOL, think of Yahoo, think of
yeah.
any number of things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And I think this is also where, again, it just goes back to that, like, not putting all of your eggs in one basket. You want to make sure
Mhm.
that you have a kind of diverse marketing bundle. But yeah, other things that touch the world of AI. So I think when people think AI, what they mean in their head is like a shorthand for something that's kind of like ChatGPT, right? Like when most
Right.
of us think AI, I think that's the very classic example. But there are a lot of concepts that are related to AI, and like engineers, like, it's okay, don't come for me. I understand that I'm going to be muddying the waters here a little bit, but Google has been using what's called machine learning
Mm.
for a long time. So machine
Right.
learning is basically taking these huge data sets and training a algorithm. That would be another word that was a
Mhm.
buzzword, 10 years ago and is still active today. But
Sure.
training that algorithm to get better and better. Why that's an advantage for folks who are using the Google Ad Grant is that Google has been getting better and better over time at figuring out what people want and showing them what they want to see. And so,
Mm.
you asked your earlier question about targeting. One of the things that I think is really cool about the ad grant, and one of the reasons that I actually generally will not recommend people overly limit their geographic targeting and stuff like that,
Mm.
is that I'll use a case study from a client that we have. We have a client who are an acoustic music, like, performance house in Utah, but they
Okay.
actually have their campaigns running nationally because the thought was both folks in Utah might be interested in this, but also we want to capture people who might be planning a trip to here and might be interested in seeing live music. And over time, Google has been looking at that audience and centering it more and more on Utah and centering it more and more on those states kind of surrounding Utah
Mm.
on its own. It's figured out enough about who wants to see it, who's interested, and what that has meant is that the overall, like, audience engagement, their conversion rate has gone up over time
Okay.
because Google's gotten better at finding a better and sort of like more engaged audience. So I think that's another cool
That
use
is
for
that's
AI.
interesting. It's actually capturing the day tripper or the overnight guest, but
Yeah.
regionally. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that does is folks who are concerned about privacy may
Mhm.
have location services off. They may also clear their data, clear their cookies really regularly. So, one of the advantages to not restricting it to, like, let's say, just Utah. If you restrict it to just Utah, what you're really restricting it to is people who Google knows for sure they're in Utah. And
Right.
where Google's not sure, they're going to say, well, I don't know for sure this is Utah. So I'm going to just go ahead and exclude them. So that's
Yeah.
kind of why I don't necessarily think of that
Yeah.
as like a
Well,
great.
and you also come to things like where the host server is for whatever company you're using.
Yeah.
Might be like here, sometimes I'll show up in Virginia because that's where the host server is, even though I'm not in Virginia. And yeah, so Google figures that out. If you
Yeah.
just restricted it, it would probably exclude me.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that these are some things of advertising that are AI genuinely I think benefits. I think where there is risk, and I would say advertisers beware, is I have seen increasingly nonprofits using tools. I don't honestly remember the names of some of them, but there are tools that will basically make decisions within your ads account for you, and the AI
Mm.
will optimize how your account is running. Google actually has some of its own tools that do this, but Google's tend to be a little bit higher quality. At any rate, I have seen a number of accounts go from performing well to absolutely tanked over time as the
Mm.
AI, gets in a little like self-feedback loop and ultimately makes changes that are not good for the account. So
Okay.
I would really not recommend offloading the decisions about like which campaigns to turn on, which campaigns to turn off, which keywords to run, which keywords to remove, like things like that. I would really not recommend handing those off to AI. Is it possible in 5 or 10 years that it'll be there and it could do it really well? Probably, possibly. But I would not, in today's environment, I would not do that. One that I think is an edge case is ChatGPT. While we're talking about
Hmm.
AI,
Okay.
I think that there are some possibilities with ChatGPT to make your work a little bit easier. So, if you, let's go back to that animal shelter example, right? You're like, okay, I know I want to use the keyword dogs for adoption because we have a lot of dogs and they're ready to be adopted, but now I
Right.
need a bunch of related keywords. You can ask ChatGPT, hey, can you spit me out a list of 50 related keywords? And it can definitely do that and with a decent degree of accuracy. Same thing with like, hey, I have this text. Can you give me some variations on this? Kind of using it through the
Mm.
creative process to help you with generating text. That can also work. What I would not do, again, is just blindly paste whatever is in ChatGPT into ads and, dust your hand off and call it done.
Yep.
I would make sure you're backing up whatever you're doing with ChatGPT with, for example, in the keyword example, using some of Google's keyword research tools and saying, okay, so like canines for adoption might be a variation of it, is a synonym, but is anybody actually searching that? Probably not.
Right.
Versus puppies for adoption or something
Yeah.
like that, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of kind of using your own discretion there. And the same is true for this example of like add text. So you want to make
Mm.
sure that whatever you're looking at, one has some personality. I think if you see enough AI content, you will begin to identify what it is because it all begins to
Yep.
sound a little bland, a little flat. But the other thing about it would just be to make sure that the tone and everything kind of matches what you are trying to do with your audience and sort of how it relates to your issues. So I think with ChatGPT, I think it generally speaking tends to give you things that are very upbeat, which might
Yep.
be very appropriate if you're like, yeah, we help little kids to thrive with
Right.
our child lunch program or something like that. But it might not be appropriate if you're like, hey, we're helping survivors of domestic violence to escape
Right.
their abusers like that. And that might be not the right tone at all. So
Yeah.
you want to just be double checking that everything that it spits out is going to be the correct fit for what you're trying to do. But it can help you, especially, I think we've all been there where you're staring at a blank page and you're going, "Oh my god, I
Hmm.
know I need to get more of this, but I'm just blocked." Like where do I go from here? It can be a great sort of bounce ideas off you type of tool.
Now that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's a good rule for any of us using AI. I mean, I work in academia some, teach a few classes, and yeah, what you're hitting actually is fascinating because I see that in some of the papers I get. Some people would try AI, right, or try to pass it off as an assignment, or just but using it as kind of a ramp up can be really good for things. And so yeah, no, that's huge. Anything else we should talk either about the future of ad grants or ad grants themselves that you think people ought to know?
It's a great question. I think that, as far as the future of ad grants go, I think it's probably going to be a program that continues for a long time. I mean,
Hmm.
Google has had this program running, gosh, I want to say maybe since like 2007 or 2008. So we're coming up very close on like 20 years of the
Wow.
ad grant program. So it's been
Yeah.
around a long time. And I don't necessarily see any reason that that will discontinue in the future. I think
Okay.
one of the things for advertisers to stay nimble about is that Google is in its other products pushing more of their machine learning tools. So, like
Mm,
Performance Max is an example of a tool that is available in some of the paid advertising accounts that's not available in the ad grant account. So what I would recommend there is making sure that you're thinking pretty critically about not just getting as much as you can out of the ad grant account, but also maybe thinking about, okay, if we think that advertising, if we if we have some data that indicates that advertising works, might it be worth investing more? Might it be worth
mm,
putting $200 a month towards paid advertising and seeing
right.
if using some of these other modalities that Google offers, if that's valuable for us. I think staying open to experiments and staying flexible is going to be super important. I think it's been important for marketers for forever,
Yeah.
but I think especially as the sort of communication sphere just gets more and more crowded, and we're also seeing more and more nonprofits. Like it's easier to start a nonprofit than it has
It's
been in the
true.
past.
And there's things like fiscal sponsors that have all sorts of programs that are affect nonprofits themselves. So yeah, there's a lot going on that way. No, that's a very good point. Um, yeah, being able to uh, keep an eye on these things is huge.
Yeah.
Uh, um, so before we go, a couple things. You brought a gift, right?
Yes, yes. So for folks who signed up, we have a tool that I put together that will help you to basically, as you are doing your keyword research, a question that we get from folks a lot, like Google provides a tool, it's called Keyword Planner. It's available in your ad grant account. It's free, but it will give you a tool that'll tell you like how many people are searching for something a month, what
Mm,
the, top of the page bid usually looks like as far as like how much would it cost per click, on the lower end to the higher end, so you can get an idea of the range of costs. We can also dive more into that in a second if you'd like, and it'll give you, it'll tell you whether it's in your account or not, et cetera. But a question we often get is like, okay, I can see all this, but how do I know if it's like a good opportunity? So what we did is built out a tool. It is a spreadsheet. It's in Google Sheets, but it is designed to help you sort of make that judgment call based on what is the volume for this keyword? What are the prices? Is this something that what is the competition? Is this something I should potentially prioritize? Is this like an absolutely, is it a
mm,
maybe, or is it a no? So that is kind of what that tool is designed to do, is sort of help you with that keyword research process, because I know from working in both SEO and in ads, if you are new to keyword research, it is a lot to take in at once. There's a lot of options to parse through, and it's
yes,
hard
I.
to narrow it
Mm,
down to what's going to be the best for you. So
yeah.
that tool, again, it's kind of a use at your own risk. It's a bit of a disclaimer, but it is designed to sort of help you begin that process and begin sussing out like what might be advantageous and what might be ones to skip or to delay until a later point in time.
Well, and getting to your point before, data is huge.
Yes.
So being able to make data-driven decisions, and it's is really important. And it sounds like you've developed something that at least kind of gets started on that.
Yeah, it can give you a good idea, at least based on some preliminary signals. And then always, 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 you're going to want to use the data that is actually in your account from your actual experiments running it, because we can only see so much, and even folks who are professionals in the industry only know so much about all of the different factors that Google uses to rank things. So you really want to see how it's performing against your current website, your ads that you're running, and you really want to go based on that. But when you're getting started, it can be very overwhelming. So this is a sort of designed to be maybe training wheels to sort of get you
Yeah.
where you're going to go.
Okay, cool. And now, just to let people know, right, that when they click on the link, and again, if you sign up on Eventbrite, you're going to get this link. And if you're listening to one of the recordings online, podcast, YouTube, whatever, it'll be on the page with that, right? You can go through the link. They're going to have to make a copy of this,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And for some very good reasons, because otherwise people will just be overwriting the same thing, and it will be very confusing. So
Yeah.
don't be freaked out. Oh, why is it telling me to make a copy? No, you want to make a copy for yourself.
Yes, you want your personal one. We did not want one mega collaborative document that, people all over the world were working in one. We just wanted to make sure, and also so that, there are some formulas, et cetera, that are running in there. So the goal was so that you can make a copy so that we can continue to use our sort of base document that we
Right,
created.
right,
And you will
exactly.
have a copy of that.
That's great. That's really good. Well, hey, I really thank you for being with us today. I found this hugely educational. I'm sure people listening and watching this have the same. It's really been cool. So if they want to find you or getting attention, they want to get your attention.
Yeah.
What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways you can reach out to me and my team. So if you have any questions for me, you can reach out to me. I'm jessica.king@gettingattention.org. I'm also on LinkedIn. Search for Jessica King and then look for me. There are a lot of Jessica Kings in the world, but if you also search Getting Attention, you'll probably find me. Email and LinkedIn are going to be kind of the best ways. And then, if you're interested in this topic, maybe you're not quite ready to get in touch with somebody, but you want to learn more, gettingattention.org is our website, and you can go in there. We have all sorts of articles about the Google Ad Grant, nonprofit advertising, as well as a lot of other nonprofit marketing topics. So we have, like a recent deep dive on email. We have some on like content marketing more generally, lots of videos and stuff. So it can be a good resource if you are maybe just starting to get your feet wet and are hoping to learn more.
Cool, cool. And yeah, I have to say from personal experience, we've met before, right? In your what is it, organic SEO
Yeah,
world,
back in
right?
the day.
And I have to say that working with you and your team was great then, and I can't imagine it's going to be any different now. So
Yeah.
it's really great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Uh, I just, that's it for today's show. Now, just to let people know, on September 26th, we have Sonia Soleil from Uplifting Nonprofits is going to be with us. I think we're scheduled for 11 or 11:30 Eastern. We'll firm that up. To get notice on that and other show episodes, of course, sign up for the newsletter at Nonprofit.Courses. Sonia's, I don't know, Jessica, if you know Sonia, her business name is Uplifting Nonprofits. And I will say that is perfectly appropriate for her because she is one of the most uplifting people I know. She's really a neat person to talk to. And we're going to be talking like in person live, like,
Oh, how
I
cool.
can touch across the table kind of
Yeah, you
in
guys can high
person
five.
live. Right. She's going to be here in the Philadelphia area for some other things. And so we arranged to have a special episode with her actually live. We're going to be talking about the future of donor retention. And, the back door, people leaving as donors is a huge problem in just about any nonprofit. Folks want to make a gift, right? But then the next time they're not. Well, we're going to talk about that, how we can stop that, and what the future of donor retention is, because that is a huge and very important topic for any nonprofit.
Yeah.
So that's it for us, for me, for Jessica. Thanks for joining us.